Hi, so great to have you here, Darrell and Will. Excited to hear about Whoop. So maybe Will, can you tell us what is Whoop? How did you come to?
Yeah, so really our mission at Whoop is to unlock human performance. So we believe that every individual has an inner potential that you can effectively tap into if you can better understand specific things about their physiology. I got into this space personally because I was just really into sports and exercise. I was a college athlete. I was playing squash while I was at Harvard. And I felt like I was surrounded by athletes who didn't necessarily know what they were doing to their bodies. So athletes overtrain, they get injured, misinterpret fitness peaks. And so for me, it was really getting interested in the physiology side of better monitoring the body. And today, Whoop, we work with professional athletes, we work with college athletes, Olympians, military, so really, really top performers. And a lot of it's designed to optimize performance.
And how does the technology work? Do you happen to have?
Yeah, so I'm wearing the technology now. So you can see this Whoop strap on my wrist. And as I take it off, you can actually see the sensor on the underbody. So we have 5 different sensors sampling data 100 times a second. It's the most granular information you'll find on the human body. And then it's also largely made of material. So that allows the product to be pretty lightweight, easy to wear. And lastly, what's really convenient is when you put it on your wrist, you can also charge the product without ever taking it off your body. So by sliding on a modular battery pack, wearing this for 60 minutes will give you battery life for another 2 days. So you really never have to take it off.
Great, and so Darrell, it looks like you have a Whoop on as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how you use this in your life?
For me, I think the biggest thing that grabbed my attention is the recovery part of it. Because obviously, as an athlete, you're competitive when you're awake. You always want to compete to the best of your ability, but you're more of what you see when it comes to your performance. And the problem is we can't see our progress or our recovery when we're asleep unless we have the data. And Whoop gave me that. I'm not a great sleeper. I'm a guy who averages probably 5 to 6 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
And somehow, some way, I managed to get 80% recovery in 5 to 6 hours of sleep. But the average person can't do that. And based on the data and based on my heart rate variability and my rested heart rate, the combination of the algorithm that they know I don't, but I can manage my performance and peak more, or as I say, take my ability to the next level once I can see what my day-to-day activities or choices impact my recovery also.
Mm-hmm. And I hear we have some of your data with us, so maybe we can bring that up. Will, can you kind of tell us what we're seeing?
Yeah, so it looks like this is about a month of data on Darrell. So this looks like it was the off season. And one of the things that we do at Whoop is we try to compare your body's recovery to its level of strain on any given day. So ideally you want, when you have a lower recovery, to take on less strain, and when you have a higher recovery, to take on more strain. And for the fittest athletes in the world like Darrell, you want to be having consistently high recoveries because you're putting on so much strain on your body. And so what's powerful about it looks like your training, Darrell, is that for the most part, you are following your body's recovery. So the closer those dots are together, the more in tune you are effectively with listening to your body's recovery. So we'll tell an athlete every morning, or a coach or a trainer, how recovered is each person on your team, and then as a result, how much strain should you take on your body. And you can also see days, right, where Darrell maybe had a lower recovery but still had to take on a lot of strain, so maybe that was a game or something, right, where you had to push yourself. But in general, this is a pretty attractive month of training. It looks like you know what you're doing. So.
I have had it on since October, and it's good to see that my average recovery is 65%. But at the same time, it's the craziest things that impact my recovery. It actually tells you that if it asks you every morning, like if you had a drink before you went to bed, if you had caffeine, or if you did something else to spark your heart rate, and at the same time, it really takes a toll on your body to have more than one drink within 2 hours of going to bed, because it impacts your heart rate and its ability to actually pump blood efficiently through your body. So your recovery drops dramatically if you do have a couple of drinks before you go to bed.
We've actually seen teams quit drinking alcohol because they saw like how low their recoveries were. Not just the day after drinking, but sometimes like 2
days,
4 days later.
And I've seen it.
So it's I think what's fascinating is looking at how all these different things in your behavior or your lifestyle ultimately affect your body's recovery. And that applies, I think, for the best athletes in the world, and I think it applies to a lot of people in this room.
Mm-hmm. And how do you see this technology being used in the future? What do you imagine will?
Yeah, well, I think one partnership that we're really excited about is obviously with the NFL Players Association. So Whoop is now the official recovery wearable for every player in the NFL. It's an opportunity for Darrell and the rest of the league to wear Whoop continuously, and they'll actually get to own the data. So they'll own the data, they'll control it, and we'll be in a position to help them commercialize it. So you can imagine broadcasters talking about the recovery of the safety versus the wide receiver on game day and how that might affect the overall play. You can imagine fantasy football being influenced by how athletes are recovered, and then even just the health industry at large. Like I think there's so much to learn from people who are putting as much stress and strain on their bodies as Darrell and other professional athletes. Like what are they doing that the population can learn from to really better understand our bodies? I mean, the travel and the sleep alone, I think there's just a lot of fascinating insights that we'll learn.
Mm-hmm. And Darrell, how do you feel about the idea of your recovery data being used for fantasy football?
Well, I own it, so they can't use it without my permission.
Yeah.
But I think
that's an important point, right?
The possibility.
Yeah. And the greatest thing I think about it is that, like you said, when we do travel across to a different time zone, obviously being in California, most of the NFL is 2 time zones away, or 2 hours, I say, difference in time zone. But it takes a big toll. Like that first night, my sleep need is so much higher that because the next day I'm not going to recover that well. It's because of the jet lag or whatever you want to call it. But it was also interesting to see. I think we had a game that we were discussing, and if you look at my heart rate during the game, my heart rate peaked pre-game at game time.
Actually, I think could we bring the data up from that game? I think we have that. Sorry, Darrell.
I think this is it right here.
Okay.
So I was at that strain was at 18.5 that day, but I only recovered 52% that night. But my heart rate peaked right before the game, and it gradually went down during the game. And that game went into overtime in Houston. We ended up winning it, but we ran a lot of kickoffs that game, and I had a lot of double teams. But it's powerful to see that our pregame is harder than any part of the game, and I just see your heart rate and your anxiety level, or your adrenaline is up. And as the game goes on, you can become calm because you know what's going on. You get into the flow of it. But it's just amazing to see the difference in how your heart responds, how your body responds, because somebody else's might respond differently to this.
Mm-hmm.
And the fascinating thing too is looking at how many hours of sleep you got the night before a game. I mean, 5 hours of sleep before a game, that's like pretty low. Yeah. And Whoop said you had a pretty high sleep need, right? So the fact that you were even halfway recovered, I think, is a good sign on that sleep. And it's been fascinating to work with a lot of different pro athletes. Like some athletes can recover really fast, and others need 10 hours of sleep. And so being able to work with athletes and help them understand that is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And so what do you see teams or athletes reacting to most? Is it the sleep, the alcohol? How are they using this data, and how does it change their routine most?
Well, I think there's 2 things that shift. The first is just the way the athlete's looking at his or her own body, right? So now starting to go from thinking of yourself as an athlete 3 hours a day to thinking of yourself as an athlete 24/7. Right, that's a fundamental mindset shift where, Darrell's point, right, he's a competitive person. He wants to compete now with everyone else on how well recovered he is, right? So that's the mindset shift that happens at the athlete level. And then at the team level, I think you have an opportunity to go from treating everyone on a team as one individual, right, where you have the hard practice plan today for everyone, and then the tapering practice plan, and then everyone peaks, right? Now I think it's much more personalized, where you have some guys who are run down, who are doing certain exercises, and you have some guys who are peaking physically, who are doing different exercises. So it's a much more individualized training plan.
Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much for sharing your experience with Whoop and all about Whoop. It's been great to have you guys.
Yeah, thanks you so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Good job, buddy.